Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Ewing with Reach the Unlimited. And I am so blessed today to have Christina Rawls with us today. And we were having an amazing conversation before. So we're just going to continue from here. So, hi, Christina, and tell everybody
Hello.
a little bit about you.
Hi, how are you? And thank you, Joanne, for having me here on your podcast and your show, Glimmers of Beyond. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
grateful you are here.
Yeah. So wait, what was the question? Because we were talking about a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, we were,
Before we all started here, we were talking about all kinds of things.
but we have to let everybody else know about who you are. Hi, Michelle.
Hi,
Tell everybody a
Michelle.
little bit about who you are.
Okay, well, my name is Dr. Christina Rawls, and I am a full-time evidential, mental, trance channel, and physical medium and spirit photographer. But I've been this way all my life. I've been an intuitive all my life. I haven't always been able to handle it or manage it well. It took a long time, took me well into my 40s to really accept and now continue to learn about it all and do it full time. But I was a philosophy professor for 15 years, full time the last 6 until I left by choice right at the beginning of probably the most amazing part of my career in 2021 to do this work full time. And before that, I was a clinical counselor, mostly with children.
Wow, you have really, I mean, just in the little time we spoke before and now, you really have done a lot of things in your short life because you're not that old.
Well, you know what's funny? Thank you for saying that, but I think people would say I haven't done enough.
Well, wow,
Some
that's how
people.
full or how empty your glass is, isn't it?
Right. But thank you for saying that. Thank you. Yeah.
So you have had a very interesting journey. And one of the things we were talking about is how did you go from the direction you had started with being a
Yeah.
philosopher, a professor,
Yeah.
a teacher, that kind of thing. And then you went into, and there's nothing wrong with where you went. I want, for some reason, need to say that, but you went into this kind of work. What was the transition and what made that happen?
Whew, a bunch of things. But like I said, I've been this way all my life. And I'll give you a quick example. I was always bothering my professors in philosophy, whether it was during the master's degree 20 years ago or the PhD, or undergrad philosophy, when I fell in love with the trial and death of Socrates and
Mhm.
Plato's dialogues, but bothering them about life after death because I was having experiences since as long as I can remember. And I knew, and I don't really know how I knew back then, but I knew in my heart as a child they were real. I
Mhm.
was not imagining things. I could tell the difference. And so, when I finally made it to teaching full time and finishing the doctorate in 2015 and 2016, which took a very long time and caused a lot of trouble in my grad program because I have an unusual combination of learning differences, learning disabilities. So it makes reading and writing and sometimes even speaking very challenging. Reading is very challenging. And so, when I finally got to that full time position, I was at Roger Williams University in Rhode Island for 4 years full time. And before that, I was at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and John Carroll University in Cleveland, and lots of places. But
Mhm.
I was at Roger Williams for 4 years, and I had a beautiful little cottage on the ocean and a beautiful office and wonderful colleagues, and the students were amazing, and I loved teaching. I absolutely loved it. So to walk away was a very, very difficult decision. But part of the reason I walked away was because I was being tracked and hacked and stalked by
Mhm.
academics who wanted me to be or think I should be or think I am what they think I am.
Mhm.
And to their credit, when I felt like they had a point, when I felt like I should be listening, and these are some people who knew me quite well and some people who didn't know me quite well but collaborated. I listened. I perked up. It's, kind of like people playing smart games in the underground, right? So, fine. If you think that I need to work on something and you have all this evidence and you're kind about it, then I'm listening and I work on it. But they didn't believe me about my learning disabilities, differences, my learning. I like the word neuromagical. So they didn't believe me about the neuromagicalness. And so I had that medically documented, and then I walked away. I was tired of people, trying to influence my personal life,
Mhm.
and collapsing the personal and the professional and thinking that they could do that for the rest of my life or get away with it. It was almost as if I felt trapped on campus. Everyone knew where I was all the time. It was a small campus. They could monitor my activities if they wanted to, and I'm just a rebel, and I
Mhm.
just that was not I couldn't handle that, no matter what they thought they were
Mhm.
doing it for. And then I was being harassed, so I just walked away.
That's so interesting because philosophy is very much a part of our world, and when whatever you want to call the woo-woo world, right? It's all about the philosophy of life and understanding the
Yeah.
meaning and purpose of life. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you went from that to more of this kind of work. But I want to go back to something else really quickly because a lot of people have this and don't really utilize it or at least make friends with it to be able to move forward in any kind of educational format or any kind of format,
Yeah.
really, is the learning disabilities that
Yeah.
hold you back. How did you overcome and say, "No, I'm not gonna let this keep me from getting a PhD?"
Yeah. Well, I like to say learning differences,
Mhm,
but it feels more empowering, because I did do good work often, but I didn't read enough for various reasons. I smoked a lot of pot. I'm just going to be honest. I used various methods of dealing with it, and it was extremely hard, but no
mhm,
one believed me. They just called me lazy, and or look at, she's off smoking pot, and or just judged me based on their perceptions. But I knew I was a medium, and I knew I was an intuitive. I knew that the life after death was real, and I knew that even though my mentors helped me get through the PhD, several mentors. Without them and their patience, I would have never made it. And I did not make it easy at the time. But without them, I wouldn't have made it. But even though there's all that wonder that we study and all that amazingness we study, and I do social justice philosophy, so it applies to the real world and everyday life. And it's meaningful and it's important, and I loved teaching and had waiting lists for my classes. And so but I had to get it medically documented, and that took years and lots of money, and I didn't have that kind of time or money until I became a full-time professor, because I was an adjunct professor for several years. And as you know, our country
mhm,
drastically exploits adjunct professors who have PhDs and master's degrees but can't pay their bills or buy food. We massively exploit adjunct professors. So at any rate, it took me a long time to deal with it, to realize it, to accept it all. I went through all kinds of experiences, like we all do in life, but that were very challenging socially, and then had some trauma I experienced and survived in Holland. I was about to win a Fulbright. I was going to be a Fulbright scholar and scholar in residence in Holland. And so there's a lot of things that happened. But it took me having the money, which
mhm.
over $1,000 of my own money during COVID, by the way, which is another story, but actually finding somebody who could test me properly, because the type of learning differences I have are fairly new. They've only been on the medical books.
Huh.
One of them has only been on the medical books for 20 years, so there's barely any books about it. But
Wow.
and I had to learn what that was all about and find that and realize that that was what was going on. And the other one, people don't believe you about. The word has been around, aphantasia, for
Mhm.
100 years, but people do not believe you when you tell them, I don't think in images. I have no pictures in my brain right now. I have an empty head. I dream vividly, so I only have partial aphantasia, so I see pictures at night. My memories are there, but they're vague when it comes to pictures. But when you're imagining pictures, it's blank for me. And that's called aphantasia. And people don't believe you because most people, although I'm learning more people have aphantasia than we realize, but most people think in images. And it helps with visualization when you're a medium also. But I do not have images in my brain during the day at all.
So, what clair do you use the most when you're doing mediumship, do you think?
What a good question.
I'm a medium. I'm going to go
Yeah, what a good question. Claircognizance, surprise, surprise.
there. Mhm.
Claircognizance, and
Which is one to me,
clairsentience.
it's one of the harder ones to have because you have to really trust with that one.
You do have, that's a good way to put it. That's a
Mhm.
great way to put it. You do have to really trust.
Mhm.
And you have to then say and be okay with being wrong. You have
Mhm.
to, sometimes, but you have to say what the messages are, what the concepts are. But you can imagine as a philosophy person, the conceptual thinking
Mhm.
is easy for me in many respects, even harder concepts. So when they and I tried to prove some of this in my master's thesis 20 years ago, by the way, in philosophy also, but
Interesting.
where I wrote on time and the concept of time. But
Mhm.
they, you can imagine, they drop, as you know, sometimes entire buckets of information and concepts like downloads, and you have to linearize the messages. So that actually becomes kind of easy, not easy, but that's the main way that it often works. And of course, then there's clairsentience and clairvoyance. But because I don't think in pictures and use a lot of symbolism, I work in a way where the spirits actually the beautiful souls actually step into the room next to me, and I teach that method also. And so I can sense them clairsentience. I can sense the presence next to me and tell a lot of information just from them standing there. It's not really clairvoyance because
Right.
I'm not seeing clearly their whole body or image or energy, but I am definitely feeling it, and it's coupled with claircognizance.
Right. But that makes
So,
sense if you're doing sentience, that's just the feeling. That's not the clairvoyance is seeing.
right.
And to me, that's the easiest. Oh yeah, I see this picture right there. But
Yeah, I'm so jealous. I'm so envious. I wish.
I
I
don't
wish.
have a lot of that either. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's not one of my main hitters when I'm working.
yeah, yeah. I wish I would be wonderful, but
What's
yeah.
so beautiful that though is that because the reason I went back to that is that we can tend to, as humans, use excuses to why we don't, or why we can't, or why we're not, right? And yet, here's this situation you're dealing with, and you're having to move forward anyway. It's like find a way to keep moving forward and not letting it stop you. And that's one of the things that I really like to point out because it's so easy for us to say, well, I have this issue, so therefore that's why I can't move forward. Where you found a way to maneuver and even fought the system as you maneuvered
I
forward.
did fight the system many times in many ways, that's for sure. But and that was more about the mediumship and the life after death stuff, because I really knew it was real and wanted my professors in philosophy to pay attention, but I went about it the wrong way. And part of it was attention seeking and ego and reaction. I was very reactionary and emotional. It makes mediumship easier with the emotion piece, okay, because of feeling, right? So there's a lot of feeling,
Mhm.
and a lot of concepts, and not a lot of images and patience, right? So I made it very hard on them, unfortunately, in graduate school, but I had great mentors in many respects, and they were very patient with me, and they guided me, and they gave me second chances, and they helped, and they looked for those aspects of my thinking
Mhm.
and my teaching and my passion for learning and philosophy, they
Mhm.
looked for those moments, and thank God.
Yes.
Because if they had been by the book all the time, if they didn't care, if they were just like, if they graded me for grammar, now you have to imagine I'm in my young 30s and it's a PhD program, one of the best in the country in continental philosophy. If they had graded me on grammar alone, I would have failed the program.
Mhm.
So they were able to find ways to see
Amazing.
what I was doing. And I took on Spinoza's Ethics, which is one of the hardest texts ever written in the Western Hemisphere. And I only say that way because it's the truth. It is a hard text, but I wanted to challenge myself, and they knew that. They knew that I was interested in the ideas and that I wanted to see what my brain could do. What they didn't take into account was what I was telling them about how hard it was to read and write. It was so hard. So they were simultaneously balancing looking for the moments, the ideas, helping me, being patient, understanding that there was a problem there. Sometimes they thought it was mental health, and it wasn't. It was learning differences that I finally then got documented. So auditory processing disorder and aphantasia.
The thing that's amazing that you didn't get mad, you didn't quit,
Oh,
you
I
didn't
did.
give
Oh,
up.
I did. Oh, I so did.
Moving because you got to where you needed to be, right? Because we're always where we need to be
Ye
anyway. So that's
yeah.
really a mute issue.
No, I was a behavior problem as a grown woman in grad school. I mean, I was in many ways, but with people who were patient and kind and just accepted me for who I was, or then things went well when that happened. And I loved teaching, and I think it saved me
Yeah.
in many respects, and the students that benefited from that, because we go to philosophy for many reasons. You have to have a passion for learning and ideas and logic, but you also end up learning how to become a teacher and a researcher and continue to study philosophy. I mean, that love does not end or die after grad school if you're really someone who loves it, and the challenge of systematic thinking and very hard systems and very difficult logic. But the teaching is what saved me and everybody else, I think, what gave them hope, because it's part of the PhD program. You have to do it
Mhm.
to get, and I excelled in that one area in particular. And so they were like, well, all the students love her classes and they're actually learning something, and she loves teaching and she's a good teacher. Maybe it's going to be all right.
I love
um,
that. So
yeah.
how did you go from that then to the steps to where you are now? What was the process for that?
You mean the
Kind
full-time mediumship, or the
of
trance, or
and the orbs, if you guys go to her website, you'll see the
oh,
orbs that she's
yes.
doing and the art.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the orb magic, right? And the spirit orbs. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy about it. The dust and water does sometimes look like orbs, but orbs are real.
Mhm.
We have multiple, they are the language of spirit. They are not your loved ones, but your loved ones in spirit can use them to help communicate with you. They are their own phenomena. And they started appearing for me in 2007, and they now have continued to appear regularly, and every time humbly stated that I ask. And they are balls of light that fly around the room, inside, outside, day or night. And they sometimes and often have faces of your loved ones inside. And this isn't just seeing faces because we want to see faces, and there's a name for that. And Wikipedia needs to help figure out how to stop the policing of psi information by people who are radical cynics and skeptics, because
Mhm.
healthy skepticism, please, yes, always, but radical skepticism against psi phenomena is just ignorant, because we have so much science. We
Yes.
have so much science now. And on that note, there is a book called The Orb Project by physicists, NASA. He used to work for NASA anyway, experimental physicist Dr. Klaus Heinemann and Mikhail Ledwith, his research partner. And they have a book called The Orb Project, and it's the physics, it's the science, it's phenomenal. Like, we have the science, but sometimes for all the research that many people do, especially in philosophy, it's ironic that they don't do enough research in this area on psi phenomena, because it is real, it can be proven, and more importantly, we can help a lot of people, help people who are grieving, help people learn about life after death, the
Which is real.
soul.
They
It's
still get
real,
you. What is
right?
the purpose do you feel of for an orb?
Well, interestingly enough, Suzanne Giesemann, if you've heard of her, your viewers might have heard of her. She channels. She's a used to be a U.S. Navy commander, highest ranking female on 9/11, and now is a very public and successful and amazing and beautiful.
Mhm,
Has helped thousands now over the past decade. Trance channeler. So she channels her group Sanaya,
mhm,
and Virginia Hummel is an orb medium, and Virginia has books about it, about orbs. And she asked Sanaya in trance and asked Suzanne, what is an orb? And the definition was, they basically said, and it's on my website, which is drchris1111.com, but it's on there, the definition, and they basically say we are sentient beings, if you want to call us beings. We are another way for spirit to express itself. We are the language of spirit. We have our own structure, our own system, our own rules, and we come here for your enjoyment, for messages from the beyond, from your loved ones, and fly balls of light, fly them, for your joy,
wow.
flying past you. And they said we are real, but they're working with our technology, right? And some people theorize, well, then they are some kind of extraterrestrial intelligence, and that is still slightly possible, but it seems to be, if it is connected in some way to something like that, it is very, very spiritual.
Well,
It's
it would fall into
incredibly
the category.
spiritual. What'd you say?
It would fall into the category of extraterrestrial. I mean, it is
Kind
something
of.
unidentified, but
Yeah, kind
it's
of, but it's physical phenomena
okay.
that has repeatability, that is spiritual in nature,
Mhm.
and that your loved ones can use to communicate, and that the spirit world can use to communicate. And I have repeatability, and many orb mediums have repeatability. My favorite orb medium, hands down, is Liz Webb in Australia. So a lot of people don't even know about her. She has an Instagram page called Amazing Orbs. She
Mhm.
gets the most phenomenal orbs and communicates with them regularly. Ask them, we can ask them to do certain things. That's another way you can tell they're responding and that they're sentient and that they're real. So you could say, please go sit on that chair, and all of a sudden there'll be a big ball of light on the chair.
Wow.
So
I have
energy,
never
energy.
yes, but I've never thought to actually communicate with an orb.
Yay! So start.
Yes, I
So start.
I really don't I can't even tell you why I've never thought of it.
Yeah, no, I love your honesty too, because a lot of us don't think
Yeah,
of that. I didn't think of that at first, except to say thank you
yeah.
and can you come back?
Mhm, mhm,
But yeah, Liz is doing incredible experiments, and there's Nancy Myers, Virginia Hummel, and they've published many, many books. I have some small, cheap ebooks with lots of pictures if people are interested, but
mhm,
about some of
mhm.
it. But my mother actually sent me the pic of the first orb I ever saw. And she said she just felt the need to take a picture all of a sudden of her grandchildren laying and playing in the living room. And right behind them was the ethereal body, neck, shoulders, upper torso, and head of her father, my grandfather, who had just crossed over 2 years prior. And the orb of light was only around his head, which I found so fascinating. The
Yeah.
orb was around and a part of his consciousness, but his ethereal and his facial features were inside the orb, and he
Uh-huh.
was sitting on a recliner, which was his favorite place to sit in the whole world,
Uh,
and his ethereal body was clear in the chair, and I was a PhD student in philosophy, and I went, "Oh, I have to do something with that now, because that's real.
yeah.
That was real." That's the first orb I ever saw. So, thank you, Grandpa.
Yes, exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
So, did you been because you've been doing this for a while in the spiritual world. What is your favorite thing to do?
Oh, what a fun question. Well, that what we were just talking about is a form of physical mediumship, and I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So, because it's physical phenomena. So, I was a physical medium without even realizing it once the orbs started appearing all the time in 2007, and then they exploded in 2011. And they've been around ever since. My favorite thing to do is to help people who are grieving or who want to talk to their loved ones in spirit. I mean, that's right up there, number one. And then number two would be attending physical phenomena, manifestation, seances, and working in that vein. So those, helping people, but then showing what's possible in an actual seance or trance channel kind of thing.
So, let's talk about that because that's a word that a lot of people can get hung up on, seance.
Right. Negative.
Big
Right.
stigma
Right.
around through our society. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about a seance and what that is and whether it is something dark or if it is something light and can it be something dark?
Right. Anything can be used for good or negative.
Mhm.
Anything. Right. Um, People have free will, and they can maybe not know what they're doing, or not protect themselves properly, or not do homework, or not have a good teacher, and then, have some kind of I don't want to scare people at off, because it's amazing what this work is, humbling and amazing and beautiful, and helps so many people and is important. But yeah, there can be negative with anything. You can be, they say, oh, mediums are frauds. I know police officers, or maybe, even though we need the police and I respect the police, anybody, teachers, Boy Scouts, we've shut down the Boy Scouts. Why? Because of child sex abuse. We've, the church, child sex abuse. Like, anything can be good or bad, or used for good or bad. And there are good and bad people everywhere.
Mhm.
And free will is real. That's what creates negativity and evil, if you want to call it that, on the earth plane, because our souls are made of love, but we have free will. So what we do with our experiences on the earth plane is up to us. But when it comes to physical phenomena and the word seance, Native American Yuwipi shaking tent ceremony is the same thing. So there doesn't have to be a negative connotation around it. It's as old as human beings themselves,
Mhm.
and it's a kind of mediumship and a kind of healing experience, always about healing, and a type of communication with the spirit world that is life changing. It is profoundly life changing. With, as many people know who are probably even watching right now, or as we know, mental evidential mediumship is, you're being used, and you're giving permission, and you're using yourself and your dedication, your focus, your heart, and your consciousness, along with your brain, because you need your brain to be able to focus on
Yeah.
with what you're doing, and your language,
Mhm.
to communicate with a higher dimension, with other dimensions, because we are multi-dimensional beings, and we expand our consciousness. I think it's delta, theta, and delta waves, whereas normally we're at alpha and beta during the day. But you go into meditation and you go into these delta and theta wave zones, and you expand your consciousness, and you connect to other dimensions, and you can talk to the spirit world. You can talk to your loved ones. You can talk to grandma and grandpa again, and it's the same thing with seance, except with the mental mediumship, we are literally the bridge, right? The medium, and we have to translate what is being shown to us or said to the person that we're talking with or trying to, be there for or help connect to their loved ones in spirit. It's the same thing in physical mediumship, except everyone in the room sees, hears, and talks with the same spirit. So it's extremely life-changing to watch a spirit walk into the room with everybody as witness. And to be able to check, because a good sign of a real physical medium or seance medium is they'll let you check everything before and after their body, their clothes, their hands, the room, the cabinet they sit in, or the tent, because that contains the energy. But sometimes you don't even need a cabinet. You can have like a curtain, right? So it'll contain the energy behind the curtain. You've seen the old spiritualist pictures, right? Where mediums are behind a curtain and it's kind of open or under red light or blue light or something, often red light. So there are dark seances, yes, and people get skeptical of that because it's in the dark, but that just means they do not know about how it works, and they have never been to one, usually, because ectoplasm is real, if you want to call it a substance just to make it easier, but it's not a substance, but it's a part of us, it's energy. And ectoplasm can be transformed by the spirit world and used and molded. And so you go into a dark seance because ectoplasm is sensitive to light. It's the type of substance that's sensitive to light. So you, not always, but often. And so if you have a full physical phenomena materialization medium, such as Michael Shane in the United States, or Warren Kaler in the UK, or Kai Muga in Germany. And I've been to many of their seances, although I can't wait. I have to yet to get to one of Kai's in Germany, but it protects the medium. The darkness protects the medium because they can be harmed. They can be burnt by the ectoplasm. They can be seriously harmed. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to know, you have to have practice, done homework, have good teachers. The people around you, meaning the people kind of in charge of the seance and like around you, have to know the safety rules. So people get suspicious of the dark and they get afraid, but there's nothing to be afraid of if you know why and you know what you're doing. And then some of them are in red light, so you can see everything under red light. And red light is used because it's a safe wavelength. It's a very safe wavelength for the spirit world. Think of a dark room when you're doing photography. It's in red light, right? When you're developing, it's not scary, it's needed for the photos, right? So it's very similar. So some of them are in the light, and Stuart Alexander in the UK is one of the best in the world now, retired mostly, still alive, wonderful, amazing human being, has the most integrity. If people say, who's the seance medium or physical medium with the most integrity in the whole world, I don't know if they could pick or would do such a thing, but often people say Stuart, Stuart Alexander. I mean, 50 years the man dedicated his life to helping others and doing this work and never asked for a penny other than to maybe eat or for his lodging to travel, but didn't do it for the money or ever, and did it for helping people and for learning about the spirit world and for helping the spirit world, because it's a collaboration. They're still experimenting. They're experimenting, and they still have free will in the spirit world too, but they're experimenting and learning, always learning a little bit differently than we are, because they don't have the constraints of a body, a physical body,
And the mind.
and the brain part, right? They have a larger consciousness, and thoughts create reality, and it's all about love and learning and expansion, and there's not really much judgment at all in the spirit world. But people do retain their personalities, so it gets interesting.
So that's an interesting question, or an interesting statement you made, because my whole philosophy on that, as if I have the background to it, but this is my understanding and my experience, is that we say that they have the personality based on what we know them as a person, but that's not really who they are as a soul, which
Right.
could be like many different
Right.
times. So
Right.
they come as that, keep that personality when they're in this realm of
Yes.
people that would know them as that person. Is
Yes,
that
yes,
correct?
it's just like recognizing a language or
Right.
not. You
Mhm.
go to another country, you don't speak that language, although you hopefully are learning or trying to because of whatever, because you want to, because of respect, but you don't know that language right away, and then all of a sudden somebody speaks your language and you're like, "Oh, you recognize it," right?
Yes.
That person still speaks their native language, the country you're in, where you visited, but they're now speaking your language. So it's kind of like that, you recognize the person, you'll recognize mom, you'll recognize dad, you'll recognize your child, grandma, your friends, because that's your consciousness in this lifetime that was with them in this lifetime. But
Exactly.
you're right. We have the little bit I know, and I'm learning from my
Mhm.
spirit team and related and research and all that. But my intuition, because we all have it, we all have the information, we all have the knowledge, but we kind of forget because if we had all that at once, we'd explode in the where we are now here. But if don't trust anyone who says, for $2,000 I'll tell you all about it. No, go
Yeah.
into meditation, or maybe take a class or two, but go into meditation and you'll learn all about your soul and the spirit world, and slowly, and you don't even have to use meditation, but we have the knowledge already. But yeah, no, I agree. We have so many other lifetimes. Our soul is so much larger with so much more understanding, knowledge, and love, that we're just lucky enough to be a part of it in some way, or an expression of it, and an expression of the infinite. You can call it God if you want, and that's okay, really.
That's a
We
hard
we
thing for people, though.
right, we
That
tend
one word is a hard
right,
thing for
right,
loving it or hating it. You got that
right,
gamut.
right, right. And we call it divine source energy in mediumship, right? It's a much easier and more sensible
Mhm.
concept sometimes. Divine source energy, infinite, I call it the infinite, and infinite love, right?
Mhm.
Infinite knowledge, like the energy that is the all, or however you want to. And divine source energy, I like that as well, but divine is a loaded philosophical and otherwise theological concept and word. um the word God will turn some people off immediately,
Mhm.
and without using it, it'll make some people suspicious immediately. Oh, you're a medium that doesn't use the word God? Oh, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or you're a medium that only uses the word God all the time. That's going to turn some people off also. So there has to be a compromise, I
Well,
think.
I feel like it's a thing we grow into. We because it depends on our background and how we're gonna
Right,
perceive that word, or what kind of relationship we have with it,
right.
to developing our relationship back to the truth of who our connection belongs.
Right. And all the I mean, there's a lot of good in religion, like, there's a lot of good, and,
Mhm.
love thy neighbor, and, like, there's a lot of beautiful things in organized religion, but there's a lot of war and pain.
There
It's
is.
just wars and wars and more wars and torture in the medieval times, and people trying to hurt others based on religion. Organized religion has got to change its tune and just go back to the love and the diversity,
That's it.
uh, of opinion, and the respect, and just leave it at that. Free will is real. It's up to each person. We are all on our own journey. We chose to be here.
I feel like that word, God, is a word that we should be using more in conversation, because God isn't what, even today in the religions that we have that are trying to force their agenda on people, like you can't do this, or you have to do this, or love
Right.
thy neighbor except for when I don't want to, kind of.
Right, except when your neighbor has a transgender child, right? Then it's a problem.
Exactly. But yet, I think as we keep talking about that narrative and change, that God really is love. Whatever you
Right,
want to say to that
right,
being, which is our supreme power,
right,
and universal consciousness, we have to understand that that's still a part of our evolution, our
right,
universal consciousness.
right.
But yet, I think talking about that word and trying to take that sting, like what Lisa said, a trigger, right? We have these triggers based on our past or how we
Right.
grew up with that word. When
Right.
if we can just, it's like for me, when I'm talking about this kind of woo-woo stuff and God comes up, I still have to swallow
Right.
because of
Right.
my background with that
Right.
particular
Right.
place. But I
Right.
think
Well,
we learn.
I just for fun, I got kicked out of Catholic school in kindergarten for asking too many questions. So I love that. I would not let the nuns paddle me. You should not be hitting children at 5 years old for asking a question.
Exactly.
And yeah, I didn't, yeah. But I hear you, I agree. And in philosophy, a quarter to a half of what we teach are on topics like this anyway, or
Mhm.
what we think about, what can be rationally thought about, but when it comes to this kind of concept, or rationally proven. But what's so fascinating to me now is reading Red Cloud Oglala Lakota Sioux Chief from the 1800s, most photographed Native American history, humbly stated he works with many mediums, but he is on my team sometimes, and he does help sometimes, and I'm so grateful. And he's transfigured his face over my face on camera, and we have those pictures, and you can look at some of those in my ebook on transfiguration if interested. But um you know their teachings, Red Cloud's teachings,
Mhm.
like through the medium Estelle Roberts for 50 years,
Mhm.
there are books on his teachings. She was so well known as a medium in the UK 100 years ago that everybody would pack into these little houses and these little auditoriums, including journalists. She would go into a trance. She would speak in direct voice. Red Cloud would speak through her, sometimes in his own voice. And the journalist would ask him questions and then publish his answers in the newspaper the next day, back
Mhm.
in the heyday of spiritualism.
Mhm.
So, but if you read his writings and you read Silver Birch, which I'm just now reading, and you read, these beautiful trance-channeled messages, Saint Germain,
Mhm.
that come through trance mediums, even today, and on YouTube, trance-channel mediums who are channeling
Mhm.
legitimate ones like Cryon and Lee Carroll, or who are channeling Saint Germain, or um, they all say the same thing for hundreds and hundreds of years. We are made of love.
Mhm.
Life goes on after physical human death. We are multi-dimensional. We have a soul. We reincarnate, or kind of. It's complicated, but pretty much. We have free will even when we cross over.
Mhm.
Thoughts create reality. There's no judgment, but there's lots of learning.
Mhm.
In our life review, you have to see how you treated everyone you've ever met, or how they treated you from their perspective. That's
Mhm.
what a life review is when you die. Crossover, you just have to go through seeing everything you've ever affected or affected you from the other person's perspective. So it's all about perspective. But what's so amazing, natural law. We have the power to talk to the spirit world because we are half spirit. We're half biological and half spirit, half soul. So we can tap into those powers.
Yeah.
And if you want to call it that, they call it natural law. So
I don't know
there's
if I'm half.
teachings.
I'd like to say I'm three-quarters spirit.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
I don't want to be half of both. I want to
Yeah,
be
right.
right.
Oh man. Okay, well, okay, but the fun part, that's
Uh,
great. I love that. But the fun part is that, as you know, and my team, you can hear on my podcast, you can hear my spirit team speak through a very well has a lot of experience. She's not well known, but she has 50 years of experience.
Mhm.
And she's connected to indirectly to IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where Dr. Dean Radin is, and all of those folks. But um, you can hear my spirit team speak to me for a few minutes at the end of one of my podcasts, and they say to me that they need me and want me to
Mhm.
please choose to work on grounding myself. And by the way, in another way, for other reasons, my grad school mentors would have said the same thing. Please ground yourself here. Like, stop smoking pot and not, supposedly not reading enough, whatever. But I read all the time, every day of my life, one way or another.
Uh-huh.
But my spirit team said, ground yourself, because if your physical body, so I'm just going at you for the 3/4 soul, because if your physical body is, especially for a physical medium, right? If
Mhm.
your physical body is not grounded enough,
Mhm.
if you are not like taking your energetic, biological, quantum part of you and growing it into the ground like roots, because we are of the earth, we are on the earth. We're made of earth stuff, not just stardust.
Mhm.
And we need the oxygen, we need the trees, we need the sunlight to survive. So if you ground yourself even more, your vibration will have an easier time than lifting even higher. So they work with me always on doing both, and that's how I teach as well. Ground, 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 and then elevate and vibrate up and ground down at the same time. So that's why I say half and half.
Well, I totally agree. We do not want to be all spirit because we are
No.
supposed to be here for a human experience.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
going to miss out. So,
No, we're not going to. And pizza is a lot of fun.
yes,
Music is amazing, although there's a lot of music and laughter in spirit as well.
exactly.
Sex, not passing it up. Sorry, love it about my human self. Love it about my so yes, we are biological, and
You said something I want to come back to, though. You were talking about learning through meditation and your team working with you in meditation, but then you went off in a different direction,
I
saying,
told you that would happen.
but I want people to really listen to that because that is where you do your deepest learning is in your meditative state, where you are working with what we call our team, right? It's the
You
collective
know
of
you know
those.
what's interesting, Joanne, and I agree with you mostly. I meditate, sit in the power, we sometimes call it in physical mediumship.
Mhm.
I sit every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and I ask others to do that. Yellow Feather, one of the main spirit controls of the physical medium, Warren Kaler, and one of my teachers, a little bit, he's told me and other people in our trance classes, you only need 5 minutes. We on the spirit world, only because there's no time where they are, we only need 5 minutes of your 5 minutes, where you are literally present, like Eckhart Tolle, present. So yes, meditation works and is helpful, and the exercises are very beneficial, especially for mediumship and for talking to the spirit world and for developing your abilities to do so. And we all have it. Again, I'm not special, but not everybody likes to meditate or wants to or can, and so to speak. And so, like, I just remind people, well, when you're driving, it's meditative.
Mhm.
Go into the zone safely. Then
Exactly. Safely.
when you're cooking, it's meditative. When you're swimming, it's meditative. When you're floating in the bathtub or taking a shower, it's meditative. Completely listening to music, sitting on a chair, under a tree in your backyard on a summer's day with headphones on, listening to your favorite music is going to raise your vibration tremendously. Taking a walk along the ocean shore is going to raise your vibration tremendously. And I know, because I've learned this and I've experienced it, and now I teach it a little bit in my mediumship classes. But gratitude, we
Mhm.
all know this as mediums, gratitude, laughter, love, music, water, they all raise the vibration big time right away. But especially gratitude.
Talk to people about the importance of that because see some things people believe that meditation is just to sit there for an hour in the quiet and what?
No.
It's not.
Now, I have to admit, when I get into a deep zone, I can do that now. And I love it. And I had this fun experience and I'll answer your question, but I had this fun experience with students at UTRGV in the Rio Grande Valley when I was teaching philosophy, where we would meet for extra credit for 20 minutes twice a week.
Mhm.
And it's always warm there, so you can meet in the grass,
Mhm.
outside somewhere. And what I noticed happened, although they were there for extra credit, and we did a meditation group together for 20 minutes, right? We just meditated together silently for 20 minutes. What I noticed is almost every time there were several students who did not want it to end, did not want to stop, or did not want to talk because the sounds changed.
Mm.
Everything got calmer and louder around you, like nature. So they didn't want to break that feeling by talking, and they didn't want to get up, and they didn't want to stand up, and they'd linger and stay in the meditative zone for a while. But yeah, you don't have to sit for an hour, at least from my experience, again, and from instructions from Yellow Feather, Massasoit Chief from the Rhode Island area from 500-600 years ago. You can sit for 5 minutes and sit in the present with your intentionality, right? With your intentions to ground yourself, sit in your beautiful golden bubble of light or blue mist. I like to use blue mist. It's Saint Germain's recommendation in his book on alchemy. So I like to use the blue mist, but just sit there in your space without interruptions,
And
without the technology for
no ex
5 minutes.
no expectations.
No
No
expectations.
force you're trying, just allow.
Right, and
Mhm.
right, exactly. But you can set your intention, and
Mhm.
one of the most beautiful things you can say is, "What do you want me to know today?"
Mhm.
Because your spirit team has a bigger picture than you, and they know you better than you, and your higher self, your soul that has had all those other lifetimes, is your main spirit guide anyway,
Mhm.
in addition to your team. But what do you want me to know today? Sit for 5 minutes and just listen. And the hardest part is trusting what you then hear.
Yes, that
Or
and
think.
remembering if you're really not
Right,
consciously there,
right,
remembering what you hear.
right.
But
Well,
trust
you know
also
what you
that
could,
if you don't
Joanne, but you could say, "Help me remember it. Tell me what you want me to know today and help me remember it," right? So
exactly,
yeah,
depending on
yeah.
how you meditate it.
Right.
But one of the things oh, I forgot my question, but I wanna say this anyway. One of the things that you have to remember in meditation is there's no right or wrong.
Right.
It's your connection to the spiritual world and however
Thank
you do
you.
it. Now, I know when you were saying sitting in the power, we use that
Right,
as an entryway to mediumship because it's making us aware of the atmosphere and the
right,
what's going on around the
right,
connections to spirit
right.
around us. But meditation to me, when I'm going into meditation, that's something different with my team than if I'm sitting in the power with myself to be able to distinguish between
Yeah, it
their
can be different. Sure, it can be different. I tend to combine them, but it can be different.
I used
Um,
to find them, now
but
I don't.
I
Interesting.
love I love that you said separate because I can do that too. I'll do that more often. I love that. But I love what you just said that there's no right or wrong.
Mhm. There is
There,
no
people say, you should meditate on an empty stomach. That is not necessarily true. And
exact
in fact, it's individualized. So, some people meditate as soon as they wake up and do that kind of thing. And I don't know about you, but I need my coffee in the morning. And so my spirit team's like, fine.
exactly.
Have your coffee, put on your music, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
with you. I
Just,
need my coffee before I
yeah,
do
just don't
anything.
have. I learned not to have like 2 or 3 cups because it makes it a little harder on them to talk to you if you're like this. But just maybe have some tea. They have been trying to get me to drink more tea than coffee, and water is a huge component of mediumship. Water and music. Physical mediums need to drink water all the time. They have water under their chairs
Mhm.
during trance, and I mean, water is just a big conductor of spirit. But
Man, this hour has gone by so fast.
oh yeah.
Oh, I'm blown away. Talk
Woo.
a little bit before I do the last question. Talk a little bit about trance because not everybody is familiar with what trance is, what channeling is. What is that all about?
Yeah, well, I'm still learning. And I did not, and I always will be for life. And I did not know it would happen like I told you before, I didn't know I was a physical medium and that the spirit photography was a type of physical mediumship, and it was already happening to me. I did not know I'd be dropping into trance or doing transfiguration and now more physical trance mediumship and trance channeling. But a series of amazing synchronicities and events happened in 2021. I left teaching philosophy. I moved from a town in Rhode Island called Warren, Rhode Island, on the burial ground of Yellowfeather, which is this little park on the ocean in Warren, Rhode Island. But while I was living there, they actually put up the historical marker to say it was his burial grounds. But I left Warren and Yellowfeather, and I moved to back to the Pencil. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I lived in Cleveland for a while, taught in Cleveland. I have friends there, and had someone there that I, wanted to explore possible love with, a good friend. And so I moved to Cleveland because I could have gone anywhere. I left teaching, left Warren, Rhode Island, moved to Cleveland. And within 3 months, I literally met the internationally recognized seance medium, Warren Kaler, whose
Wow.
main spirit control is Yellowfeather.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from Warren and Yellowfeather to Warren and Yellowfeather. And that hit me like,
Yeah.
I know synchronicities because I have them all the time. We all do. It's the language of spirit, but that one hit me big time. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other things started happening very fast around August 2021. And I had some help from the spirit world and from sitting in 10 of Warren's seances in a couple month period of time, taking pictures. They kept asking me, the spirit world kept asking me to bring back my camera, kept telling me to bring it into the seance room, which is usually not allowed. So there was all this support and all these suggestions. And then I made the decision. I started studying physical mediumship more, started thinking about it more. I started realizing it was already happening to me and I didn't even know it. And so I waited and made a decision. I made a decision in September, October 2021 to be a physical medium, not just a mental medium, to really take on that responsibility. And that moment that I made that free will decision, I'll never forget it. I literally felt, I now know it was red cloud, but I literally felt someone put a Native American headdress on my head
Wow.
in meditation. And I said, okay, all right, I'm just going to wait to see who this is and try to figure out who is this? I didn't know it was red cloud at the time. And then I started orb magic. I started my business. I was doing a reading, my first reading with the new business, my first, I think it was my first paid reading with the new vocation, right? And happened to be somebody that, and as you know, as a medium, it's harder to read people that you have an emotional connection to. But it happened to be my first appointment. She didn't know she'd be the first, but she was just trying to support my
Mm-hmm.
new business. But it was my 6th grade science and math teacher who's now like a surrogate mom to me. And she signed up for a reading. And during her reading, she didn't tell me that 3 of her friends had all crossed in the past 2 months. And that's why she signed up for the reading. Did
Wow.
not tell me that because she wanted to support me, but also see if it was real, what I was doing, right? During that reading, and literally the first reading, it was like October 2021 over Zoom. One of her friends was standing behind me, and I felt energetically my arm lift on Zoom like this, and I was lifting it, so it wasn't like any kind of possession or anything, but I followed the energy, right? I followed the intuition. So it was lifted up like this, and I was holding it in the air while I was doing the reading, and she was holding my hand, the woman in spirit, and my arm never got tired, and it was up like that for 20 minutes. I never realized it.
Wow.
So we were doing the evidence, doing the reading, and she said, yeah, she had some mental health problems a little bit. She struggled with depression, some shyness. So it would make sense that she would want somebody like holding her hand kind of thing. And she was literally helping me and holding my hand and my new. So it just kind of, those kind of things started happening,
Mm-hmm.
and they started happening very fast. And now I go into partial trance channel and do trance channel healing gatherings that are extremely evidential for the sitters in the room in 9 states in the United States.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
I love
So,
it.
now they kind of, some of my spirit team takes over a little bit, or I allow them that we meld together, we meld the energy. We work together. They have a British accent and a funny laugh.
Jacqueline said she's trying to find her place in mediumship as well. And I feel like that's a journey that we go through as we work it, right? Spirit will
Yeah.
lead us into the direction that we're supposed to go if we just trust. Because what you were saying earlier, and we talked about, is thought is energy, and what you think you create.
Yes. Well, on that note, so you're right, spirit will lead you. But for Jacqueline, because we have free will and because of feeling good and then the vibration going up by how you feel, think Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks kind of stuff, and the vortex, how you feel. Find that part that you love. If you love spirit photography, it makes you really happy. That's going to help. If you love working with crystals and you really study it and you don't have 1,000 around you and don't know what they're all doing energetically, then if you really study it and you love it, do that. If you love evidential mental mediumship, and you want to help people, and you know that it's about healing and that there's a code of ethics, but you really have to practice and
Mhm.
practice and practice, then but you love it, do that. If you love psychic art and spirit art, or you're a good artist and you just find that you feel inspired regularly, then do that, because as you know, the vibration is going to go up even higher and you're going to be even more connected to spirit if you feel amazing doing it.
I love that. I love what
So,
you said. Um, that's the thing, is trusting too the experience. I was reading what Periette said about Chief James Whitecloud, that she
oh,
channels through him. So I got
woo!
distracted. Sorry.
I love it. I love it. Another channeler and another indigenous healer, beautiful, wonderful helper in spirit.
I feel again though, even like in meditation, our life is, we're not going to get it wrong as long as we're moving forward.
Right. Oh,
And
back to meditation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
if your life and like what you do, I don't feel like you're going to get it wrong. It's your path in this life
Right.
to do as you're inspired to do by your whatever motivates you, whatever
Right.
you're being triggered by, or whatever. All that is a direction to get you to move in some direction. But I don't feel like, I don't know, what's your opinion on that? A lot of people feel like you can. I personally feel like you can't. I was actually interviewing, because I loved interviewing people that go into trance. So I interviewed somebody's guide and asked, and he said that he thought that you could. And I disagreed with that. But I'm a human being and he's spirit. I don't know, because I don't have all the answers.
What did he say? Well, they don't either. Just because they're in the spirit world doesn't mean they have access to all the answers, which people are surprised to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They can sometimes go find the answer. They can often go find someone else who might know the answer. The ascended masters, and there's 144,000 of them apparently, but Jesus and Buddha just being two, but the
Mm-hmm.
ascended masters can give you the answer very easily. But not, you have to learn and you have to grow and you have to, thoughts create reality. So, in the spirit world, they don't have all the answers just because they're in spirit. But what do you mean by can or can't? Can or can't do what?
You're born into this world
Oh,
and you feel like you have to do something in this world before you leave this world, that there's something in that interim that you can get wrong. So you go to the other side and you either failed or you won. It's
uh,
like, I don't
that's
know if that's,
complicated. That's complicated. We, I mean, my philosophy brain loves this stuff, but you have to put together two things that do not seem very logically connected, linear logic
mm-hmm,
speaking, right? Um, but those two things are, you did come to the earth and choose to come back by free will choice
mm-hmm,
with help in spirit, and so you are here for a reason or a couple reasons
mm-hmm,
because you chose to come back.
mm-hmm,
And who would choose to come back? Although we have a lot of love here and we have a lot of creativity and it's amazing, the earth is amazing. I mean, have you seen the documentaries for Planet Earth? The earth is amazing.
mm-hmm.
The earth is, have you ever seen a whale or met a whale, right, or gone swimming with the dolphins? Like, the earth is amazing. But we have free will. So you come here with this semi-purpose of some sort to have these experiences, but what you do with them when you come up against them is going to be up to you, and that's fascinating.
But that's an interesting statement, though. Man, we're going to go on for 2 hours, maybe.
I
But
know.
getting it wrong based on what? It would
No, it's
be
not
your
that you get it wrong. I don't think you get it wrong. I think look, if just to give an extreme example, right? If you chose to come back and learn a lesson for your soul about how hurt you were and how hurt you might have hurt others in a past life,
Mhm,
and you didn't learn enough about how not to harm people or hurt people, let's say violently,
mhm,
right? Or you were harmed violently or something.
mhm,
And then you come back to learn more about those particular topics or
mhm,
lesson, right? The free will is going to enter in, it seems to me, from what I'm learning. The
mhm,
free will is going to enter in when you're faced with the scenario of that love and harm again,
mhm,
right? So Hitler
mhm.
is an extreme example, but it's an easy one for us to think about. We wish he didn't exist because he tortured millions and millions, or was
Mm.
the head of
Organize.
organizing the torture of millions and millions of people, including children and all kinds of people. Yes, of course, the Jewish people, which that's just horrific. And that was his main target, but also the disabled,
Mhm,
artists, children, the mentally ill. I mean, he was a horrific man by so many standards. And so, and just if you have any humanity in you at all, any love in you at all, like that, what he did was horrific.
yeah.
Um, but he was a child once. He
Mhm,
was a baby. He wanted to be an artist. He was rejected from art school 3 times. He was possibly sexually abused by his mother and physically, definitely physically abused severely by his father, and that's all documented in various books.
mhm,
So he was a child. Had Hitler been loved properly, had Hitler been loved unconditionally, had he been accepted to art school, I don't think he would have turned into the monster he became.
exactly.
So he came to this planet to learn a lesson about love.
Mhm,
And when faced with some options, he chose to react to how others treated him
mhm.
and continue to hurt people because he was hurt. How often do you hear that happening on a smaller scale? How
Oh,
often do you hear that happening where people choose to hurt others because they're hurting inside?
mhm.
So
Especially mhm,
right. So I think it's complicated. I don't think our rational brains can understand it all, but we are learning. You can look at the consistency in the teachings of Red Cloud or Silver Birch, or
mhm,
ask them these kind of questions and they'll tell you similar answers.
mhm.
We come here with something we wanted to work on. Let's
Right.
say love, or not harming others, or something, or learning how not to react or something. And then we're given the challenges that will allow us to work on that. What choice are you going to make?
That's a part of the learning too, whether you become a Hitler or whether you become a Buddha. It's
Right,
it's the opposite
right.
parallels of the same thing
And
you're
and
learning.
those that's right. And those are extremes,
Mhm,
but I've learned from some of the ascended masters, and in general, like some
mhm,
seances and, mediumship. And I think even Suzanne Giesemann,
mhm,
Sanaya, she channeled Sanaya, they talk about this. We all have the capacity for what we call, and I used to teach Nietzsche, so beyond good and evil, but what we call good and evil,
mhm.
right? What we've named good and evil. We all have
Yeah,
that capacity. I
yeah.
don't care who you are.
Mhm,
Even Malcolm Gladwell has written about this, if you know who he is.
mhm,
Malcolm Gladwell said even his mother, he's done the studies, he's done the homework. His mother is the sweetest woman he's ever known in his whole life, wouldn't hurt a soul, apologizes like I do every time I kill a spider. I'm like, thank you for your sacrifice. Like she wouldn't harm a spider, an ant, nothing. But he said with enough coercion, we've learned enough about social psychology with human beings that
Mhm.
if her neighbor who she trusts for 20 years or 30 years, her neighbor who she trusts and loves for 30 years starts throwing a rock through your window and seems seemingly justified in doing it, she's going to pick up a rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Malcolm Gladwell writes about that. Like, she would normally never do that. So
Mhm,
we have all these factors, all
mhm.
these influences, social psychology, environmental, stressors. So it's not just a simple free will choice by any means. But
Right.
I just going back to your original question, I have learned that we do come here with some lessons we want to learn. We have chosen. There is no right or wrong way. But yes, we might go back and say, ooh, it's not that I failed. I don't like the word fail. So I don't think they got that
Exactly.
right. I don't think that channeler got that right. But we didn't fail, but I didn't do as good as I would have hoped.
Yes,
And
that
I need to do better. I want to do better. I'm going back.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I asked the same channeler or trance medium, is there a way that we could prevent ourselves from coming back? Because we all say, don't do it again, don't do it
Right,
again,
right,
don't do
right,
it again.
right.
And the answer was no, you're going to come back for
Well,
the exact reason that you stated, though, because you want
yeah.
to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
There's
Can
something
you
you want to grow in.
yes. Yes. Can you imagine being shown everything? It's kind of like being a fly on the wall.
Mhm,
So you cross over,
mhm,
you have no body, there's no judgment, but you're allowed to look at it all. All the pieces are on the board for
mhm.
that event
Oh,
that you failed or supposedly failed, right? And you see if you had just said that word, this would have happened. If you had just done this, that would have happened. And you
mm,
start to see all the pain you might have caused without knowing it, pain you caused knowing it. And you're like, that's not me. That's not me. I didn't know. I didn't know. Oh my God, I didn't know. And so, of course, there's these epiphanies, and
yeah.
you go, look at it all. It's all right there. It's all quantum information. Look at what I didn't know at the time,
Mhm.
or I chose to ignore, or I want to go get that right. I want to get that right.
That's the key, right? That's what inspires us to go back is to say,
Right.
I want to try that again because that is the outcome I want.
Right. It makes me exactly, and it has to do with
Mm,
soul growth.
right.
Not only putting more love into this human species and the planet, but
Mhm,
soul growth. And
mm,
it because it's interestingly enough causality. I love that topic, and there
mhm.
is a type of causality, a cause and effect web, and
It's
so you reverberate the changes. We now know we can even slightly alter some of the Akashic records. It was not that way before. For
mhm,
some reason, after 2012 and the energy started shifting, and we're going through what's called the awakening right now and all that, right? Navy commanders, philosophy professors, emergency room doctors becoming trance channelers, right? Um,
mhm,
Beautiful, wonderful stay-at-home moms. I don't know if Lisa's still on here, but I think it's one of my friends who's a teacher now, but also a trance channeler, and
mhm.
raised her children beautifully, all that, and now she trance channels ancient dialects. Like, we're in what's called the awakening, but we may have been here before. Plato talks about Atlantis.
Mhm,
We
mhm,
may have been here before, and for all the scientific achievements and all the I'm an early modernist. That's one of my areas of specialization. So the time period of the invention of microscopes and telescopes,
mhm.
for all of that achievement and wonder and necessary, legitimate, good, ethical, logical science and medicine, and government, for all of that good, we really have lost a lot of who we used to know we were, or as a human species, and lost a lot of what we can be. And so it's fascinating we chose to come back to get some of that knowledge or add to our soul growth as a human species again.
Yeah.
Um, you
Wow.
know, so yeah,
That's
we could talk for a while.
I usually say, "What's your golden nugget?" But I think we did that right there.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
Well,
a golden nugget.
okay, okay. I'll take that. That's fun. But I will say, if anybody who's listening, if you could ever get to an evidential mental medium and a real one, such as yourself, Joanne, and if you ever just want to have the experience, there are places now like Very Soul where
Mhm.
you can just have an experience of real mediumship. They vet their mediums for a very long time, and um, I've been with them for a year and a half, but over 120 practice hours kind of thing. And they just started letting me take starter clients, even though I do this full time as a profession, right? So if you want to have the experience for yourself, please go have the experience for yourself
Mhm.
before you judge, before you criticize, before you call mediumship fake, frauds,
Mhm.
before you just scoff because you're, I don't know, in academia and you don't think this stuff is real, or you're in science and you don't think this stuff is real, or you've been taught to fear it,
Very
by your religion or something,
mhm.
right? The Vatican released its support of mediumship in 2017 for the first time ever. So they have literally released a 4-page document in their support of mediumship. So times are changing, but
Mhm.
if you can experience it, especially a physical seance or physical phenomena manifestation with a real medium that's, been around for a long time and has helped a lot of people and knows that it's about healing and wonder, and please do it for yourself, for your own knowledge, for your own experience, because what we can't convince you here today, you
No,
know.
we can't. No, and nobody can. But I do like what you said about a real one, and you know that by how you feel after. It's a
Yes,
healing experience. It's not
yes,
taking something from you. It's not leaving you feeling like something is wrong or off. It's real connection of love that you feel when you're in a real situation like that.
yes, love and joy and wonder and healing and evidence,
And
that
it's
there
not
is
taking from
evidence, not the kind you're trying to make fit, like learn what evidence is and then know that the medium gave it to you. You'll know, but evidence, names, dates,
you.
places, things that no medium should be Googling anything, but things that cannot be Googled, like stuff
Exactly.
that's not in an obituary, but like evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much,
Thank
Christina. What a
you.
great conversation.
Thank you, Joanne. Yay.
Hope
Thanks.
you all enjoyed this conversation. If you have
Thanks.
any questions or comments, please leave it in the comment section and I'll get back to it. I do check. And how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. Through their third eye. Haha. Nanu, nanu.
Follow the energy.
Nanu, Nanu. Or maybe I forget what he did. If he did the peace sign, Nanu. What did Mork? Remember Mork and
Yeah,
Mindy and Robin
I
Williams? I forget what he did. Nanu, Nanu. I forget what he did. But
think
uh, Orb Magic, which it's probably going to change the name after a few years. But Orb Magic, you can Google me, or drchris1111.com, or just christinarawls.com
it
will
does.
go right to the bigger. And there are a lot of resources, including the science. Dr. Eckhart Cruz now tests physical mediums in seance, and he found a way to do it. So go see the science, go listen to, Michael Shane, Julie Adriani, Warren Kaler, Stuart Alexander, Kai Muga. There's all these beautiful physical mediums you can go look up right now. And then, of course, Suzanne Giesman. But there's helping parents heal. If you know someone who's lost a child, helping parents heal. And my friend Christine Monchak in Akron, Ohio, has a website that helps with grieving parents, and I think it's called Umbrellas of Hope. It's on my website. So there's a lot of videos, a lot of resources, books, podcasts, life continuing podcasts by Tanya Berg. I mean, there's so much. So, and
Yeah.
it's just no excuse to
No,
say it's not real anymore, or just not believe it. It means you haven't even looked into it. So,
right. Open
yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
Please
open mind, open hearts.
mind open heart. Yes, exactly.
Healthy skepticism, but
Yeah.
open heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yay.
important. Healthy skepticism.
Right. That's right.
Very
Yeah.
important.
Yay. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much, Christina, for being here. It was a lovely
Yay.
conversation. All
Okay.
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.